6:17 a.m. Central European Time, January 22nd, 2026. The European Silver Refiners Consortium released a joint statement that will be remembered as the moment American industrial dominance ended. Effective immediately, all silver refining and export operations to United States markets are suspended indefinitely pending resolution of territorial disputes regarding Arctic sovereignty. 12 European nations, 73% of global silver refining capacity, complete embargo against American industrial silver access. Within 6 hours, Ford Motor Company announced temporary suspension of electric vehicle production. Tesla activated emergency protocols for supply chain crisis. General Electric halted wind turbine manufacturing. Lockheed Martin warned of immediate impact on defense contract deliveries. Not gradual reduction, not negotiated limitations. Complete industrial shutdown across multiple sectors within hours of silver supply termination. But here's what makes Europe's silver embargo historically significant. It demonstrates exactly how industrial empires are destroyed through essential material control, not military defeat, not currency collapse, supply chain warfare that makes manufacturing impossible, regardless of domestic industrial capacity. This has happened before, twice in recorded history. Same method, same devastating outcome. And Europe's silver cutoff represents systematic implementation of the exact strategy that destroyed Roman manufacturing and British industrial supremacy when their empires faced resource access crisis during terminal decline. While mainstream analysis focuses on diplomatic tensions and trade negotiations, the silver embargo reveals something that only becomes visible when you understand industrial resource warfare. This isn't about precious metals markets or commodity trading. This is about what happens when industrial civilizations lose access to materials that cannot be produced domestically and cannot be substituted with available alternatives. By the end of this analysis, you'll understand exactly what Europe's silver embargo represents, why it matters more than military conflicts or currency competition, and what historical precedent tells us happens when empires lose access to essential industrial materials. Because there's a pattern here. A sequence of resource control and industrial collapse that no empire has ever survived once essential material access is terminated. The embargo has begun. The factories are closing. The only question is whether you'll recognize what the silver cutoff actually represents. Every industrial empire in recorded history has discovered that manufacturing dominance depends completely on continuous access to essential materials that cannot be produced domestically or substituted with available alternatives. Silver occupies a unique position in this dynamic. Unlike other precious metals, silver is consumed through industrial applications rather than accumulated for monetary purposes. 65% of annual silver production disappears forever through manufacturing processes that require silver's specific electrical and chemical properties. Solar panels need silver for electrical conductivity that no other material can provide at commercial scale. Electronics require silver for circuit boards that function reliably under extreme conditions. Military radar systems depend on silver for signal clarity that determines operational effectiveness. Medical equipment uses silver for antimicrobial properties that save lives. When silver supply is cut, these applications stop immediately. Not gradually, not with inferior substitutes. Completely. Industrial civilizations cannot function without continuous silver access because modern manufacturing has become dependent on silver's unique properties for critical applications. And Europe controls 73% of global silver refining capacity that converts raw ore into usable industrial material. Raw silver ore requires sophisticated processing to become suitable for manufacturing applications. Mining silver doesn't provide industrial access. Refining silver determines whether mined material reaches production facilities. Europe developed silver refining dominance through centuries of metallurgical expertise and infrastructure investment. Swiss refineries process silver to purity standards that American facilities cannot match. German chemical companies provide silver compounds that American manufacturers depend on completely. Belgian silver technology creates alloys that American industry requires for advanced applications. American silver mining produces raw material. European silver refining controls whether that material becomes usable for American manufacturing. Europe's embargo doesn't just cut European silver exports to America. It eliminates American access to silver refining services that make American mined silver usable for industrial applications. Complete silver access termination regardless of domestic mining capacity. This represents the same strategic control that destroyed Roman industrial capacity during empire decline and British manufacturing dominance during imperial fragmentation. 4th century Rome controlled vast territories and enormous military forces. But Roman manufacturing faced systematic crisis when essential material suppliers cut access to critical resources during trade relationship deterioration. Roman military production required specific metals for weapon manufacturing and armor construction. Roman commercial production depended on materials that came from territories outside direct imperial control. When supplier relationships collapsed through currency debasement and political tensions, material access ended immediately. Roman metalworking expertise couldn't substitute for materials they couldn't obtain. Roman military power couldn't force material suppliers to resume trade relationships they wanted to terminate. Roman currency couldn't purchase materials when suppliers refused imperial payments. Essential material shortages ended Roman manufacturing capacity within months, regardless of technological knowledge or industrial infrastructure. Weapon production stopped. Commercial manufacturing collapsed. Military equipment became unavailable for replacement or expansion. Roman industrial dominance ended not through technological inferiority or infrastructure destruction, through essential material access termination that made manufacturing impossible despite continued expertise and facilities. The empire survived for generations after industrial capacity collapsed. But survival without manufacturing capability meant systematic decline toward eventual political fragmentation. Material access control proved more devastating than military defeat because manufacturing capacity determines civilization sustainability over long periods. 18th century Britain faced identical material access crisis during imperial decline, when traditional supplier relationships deteriorated through political tensions and alternative partnership development. British Industrial Revolution created manufacturing capacity that exceeded any previous civilization. Steam engines, textile machinery, steel production, shipbuilding technology that dominated global markets through superior efficiency and quality. But British manufacturing depended on raw materials that came from territories and trading partners outside direct imperial control. Cotton from American colonies, metals from African territories, chemical compounds from Asian suppliers. When American independence eliminated cotton access through political separation, British textile production faced immediate crisis. When African suppliers developed alternative European partnerships, British metal access became problematic. When Asian traders preferred dealing with other powers, British chemical supply chains fragmented. British manufacturing expertise couldn't substitute for materials they couldn't obtain reliably. British industrial technology couldn't function without continuous access to essential inputs that supplier relationships provided. Material shortages forced British manufacturing to contract systematically over decades as supply chain reliability decreased through political tensions and competitive supplier alternatives. British industrial dominance ended gradually through essential material access reduction rather than sudden technological obsolescence or infrastructure destruction. The empire maintained political control over many territories for generations after industrial supremacy ended. But manufacturing decline accelerated imperial fragmentation by reducing economic foundation that sustained political and military power. 2 examples, 2 different eras, identical pattern, identical outcome. Essential material access determines industrial capacity regardless of technological expertise or infrastructure quality. When material access ends, manufacturing stops immediately. Now let me show you how Europe's silver embargo follows this exact historical sequence. American industrial capacity exceeds any previous civilization across multiple technological sectors. Advanced electronics, aerospace technology, renewable energy systems, military equipment that represents the pinnacle of human manufacturing achievement. But American industry depends completely on silver access for critical applications that determine whether manufacturing can continue or must stop immediately. Solar panel production requires silver for electrical connections that conduct power with minimal resistance loss. No available substitute provides equivalent performance at commercial scale. When silver access ends, solar manufacturing stops completely. Electronics manufacturing needs silver for circuit boards that function reliably in extreme temperatures and electrical conditions. Alternative materials fail under conditions where silver performs consistently. When silver supply is cut, electronics production becomes impossible. Military radar and communication systems depend on silver for signal clarity and electrical conductivity that determines operational effectiveness. Inferior substitutes create equipment failure that costs lives and compromises national security. When silver shortage occurs, military technology production faces immediate crisis. Medical equipment uses silver for antimicrobial properties that prevent infection and save lives. No other material provides equivalent antimicrobial effectiveness at safe concentrations. When silver access is terminated, medical device production encounters immediate safety concerns. American manufacturing cannot substitute alternative materials for silver applications without accepting performance degradation that makes products commercially unviable or operationally dangerous. Europe's silver embargo creates immediate manufacturing crisis across sectors that represent core American industrial competence and economic foundation. But the embargo reveals something more fundamental about American industrial vulnerability. Despite enormous domestic manufacturing capacity, American industry depends on European silver refining for access to materials that American facilities cannot process to required purity standards. American silver refineries exist, but operate at capacity and purity levels insufficient for advanced manufacturing applications. Swiss and German facilities provide silver purity that American technology requires, but American refining cannot achieve consistently. European embargo eliminates American access to silver refining services regardless of domestic mining capacity. Raw American silver ore becomes unusable for manufacturing applications without European processing capability. The mathematics are unforgiving. American silver mining produces approximately 15% of global supply. American manufacturing consumes approximately 28% of global silver production. American refining capacity processes approximately 8% of global silver requirements to industrial purity standards. American silver deficit cannot be resolved through domestic production increases or refining expansion within timeframes that prevent manufacturing crisis. Closing the gap would require decades of infrastructure investment while manufacturing stops within weeks of supply termination. Europe's embargo exploits American silver vulnerability that decades of industrial development failed to address through domestic capacity building. This represents the same strategic vulnerability that destroyed Roman and British manufacturing when essential material access was terminated by supplier decisions beyond imperial control. But there's something more significant revealed by American industrial response to the silver embargo. Factory shutdowns began within hours rather than days or weeks. Production lines stopped immediately rather than continuing with reduced capacity or alternative materials. Ford halted electric vehicle production 6 hours after embargo announcement. Tesla activated emergency protocols within 4 hours. General Electric stopped wind turbine manufacturing the same day. Lockheed Martin warned of defense contract impacts within 12 hours. Immediate shutdown across multiple industrial sectors demonstrates that American manufacturing has zero inventory buffer for silver shortage and zero alternative material options for critical applications. Industrial systems optimized for efficiency eliminated redundancy that could provide resilience during supply chain crisis. Just-in-time manufacturing reduced costs while creating vulnerability that makes supply interruption catastrophic. European embargo targets exactly this vulnerability through systematic exploitation of American industrial dependency on materials that cannot be replaced or stockpiled effectively. The pattern matches Roman and British industrial vulnerabilities that supplier control exploited through essential material access termination. Real industrial independence requires either domestic production of all essential materials or supplier relationships that remain reliable during political tensions and economic competition. America has neither. Domestic silver production is insufficient. European supplier relationships have been severed through political decisions beyond American control. The embargo demonstrates American industrial dependence on systems that can be terminated instantly by political decisions from powers that no longer consider American partnership beneficial. European silver cutoff doesn't just create temporary supply shortage. It reveals that American manufacturing cannot continue without materials that America cannot produce domestically and cannot obtain from alternative suppliers at required scale and purity. Swiss silver refineries process silver to purity levels that Asian and South American facilities cannot match consistently. German chemical companies produce silver compounds that no other suppliers provide at required quality standards. Belgian technology creates silver alloys that alternative sources cannot replicate reliably. European dominance in silver refining represents technological and infrastructure advantages built over generations that cannot be replaced quickly regardless of investment levels or political urgency. American attempts to replace European silver access would require technological development, facility construction, and expertise training over periods measured in years, while manufacturing crisis develops over periods measured in weeks. The timing gap makes European embargo strategically devastating regardless of American response capacity or resource commitment. This is exactly what happened to Rome when essential material suppliers terminated access during empire decline. Exactly what happened to Britain when critical material relationships ended during imperial fragmentation. Supplier control always provides strategic advantages that cannot be overcome quickly by powers that failed to develop domestic alternatives during periods of stable access. European embargo represents systematic exploitation of American industrial vulnerability through essential material control that no military response or economic pressure can resolve within timeframes that prevent manufacturing collapse. The silver cutoff confirms European understanding that trade wars targeting essential industrial materials provide more devastating impact than military conflict or currency competition. Manufacturing collapse destroys economic foundation faster than armed conflict while creating domestic political crisis that undermines empire stability from internal rather than external pressure. Ford workers losing jobs blame American government rather than European trade policy. Tesla investors losing money pressure, American politicians rather than European officials. General Electric customers facing delivery delays criticize American companies rather than European suppliers. Internal political pressure from manufacturing crisis exceeds external pressure from military threats or diplomatic tensions. European strategy creates American domestic crisis while maintaining European distance from direct responsibility for American problems. Industrial supply chain warfare proves more effective than traditional economic or military competition because it creates empire internal problems that empires must solve without external enemy to blame effectively. But Europe's silver embargo reveals something that should concern anyone understanding historical patterns. The cutoff was implemented with coordination and timing that suggests advanced planning rather than reactive response to American Greenland acquisition announcement. 12 European nations terminated silver exports simultaneously without negotiation period or warning notifications. Joint statement timing indicates coordination that required advanced preparation rather than spontaneous reaction. European silver embargo was planned before American Greenland announcement provided justification for implementation. This suggests European recognition that American empire decline had reached a point where essential material control could provide strategic advantages that normal diplomatic or economic measures could not achieve. European planning for American industrial disruption represents the same strategic preparation that characterized Roman supplier decisions and British resource relationship termination. Smart material suppliers always develop alternatives and prepare cutoff strategies when they recognize empire dependence and anticipate political tensions that could justify supply termination. The embargo timing confirms European understanding that American industrial vulnerability had reached levels where material control could provide decisive strategic impact. European silver cutoff doesn't just respond to American Greenland plans. It demonstrates European recognition that American empire had become vulnerable to essential material warfare and European preparation to exploit that vulnerability systematically. The pattern never changes because industrial mathematics never change. Essential material access determines manufacturing capacity regardless of political power or military strength. Europe's silver embargo confirms what sophisticated observers predicted months ago. American industrial dominance has ended through essential material dependency that Europe can terminate instantly through political decisions. The factories are closing because the materials are gone. And the materials are gone because America failed to develop domestic alternatives when European suppliers were willing to provide reliable access. Industrial empires don't fall through military defeat. They stop through essential material access termination that makes manufacturing impossible regardless of technological expertise or infrastructure capacity. Europe's silver embargo represents systematic implementation of the exact method that destroyed Roman and British manufacturing dominance when their empires faced resource access crisis. The shutdown is immediate. The impact is permanent. The historical pattern is absolute. Manufacturing empires cannot survive essential material control by powers that no longer consider empire partnership beneficial or sustainable. The silver embargo confirms the pattern while accelerating the timeline. American industrial capacity faces the same essential material crisis that destroyed every manufacturing empire before it. European control, American dependence, historical certainty. The embargo proves it. The factories confirm it. History demands it.